Radio 7.
You're listening to BBC Radio 7. It's 3 o'clock and I'm Michaela Saunders. And after an hour of young classics, right now we turn to features and bestsellers. This week we're rubbing shoulders with Dirk Bogarde again. That's next. There's also Tête à Tête, the continuing story of Simone de Beauvoir and her relationship with Jean-Paul Sartre during the war. Find out more in 15 minutes. At 3:30, more from Dirk Bogarde and his novel Jericho. And at 3:45, more from The Wood Ant's Nest with Peter France. Right now on 7, in today's extract from his autobiography, Bogarde on Film, Dirk Bogarde looks back at one of his best-known films, a sinister portrayal of a class struggle between a servant and his rich young employer, made in 1963, which helped him make the leap from matinee idol to serious actor.
And now, Bogarde on Film. Dirk Bogarde reads an extract from his autobiographies about his film career. Episode 5, The Servant.
I'd first met Joseph Losey 10 years before on a bitter winter afternoon at the studios. I knew nothing about him save that he was an American refugee from the communist witch hunt spearheaded by Senator McCarthy, that he was a director of talent, and that he was setting up a small-budget film and was hopeful that I could be interested to play in it. My presence, it was explained, would help him to increase, if not double, his budget. It was not, truthfully, something I was interested in, but I agreed at least to let him show me some of his last film before he had to leave Hollywood. It was freezing in the small theatre where the film was projected. I was alone, since he preferred to walk about outside in the slush like an expectant father. After 20 minutes, I knew without any doubt whatsoever that the one person I wanted to work with most was kicking his heels in the car park, waiting for my verdict. Alexis Smith willingly agreed to join us, taking an incredible risk for an American actress in those days of McCarthy, and so became my first Hollywood leading lady. Although The Sleeping Tiger was not perhaps the greatest film of our careers, it served to form a bond of respect and affection between Joseph Losey and me that was to last a lifetime. And now, 10 years later, his flat, affectionate voice, that morning from Rome, was sunlight through a fog. I'm here finishing off a job. Are you happy with it? Oh, I think so. I can't tell. Joe, I wish we could find something to do together again. Yeah, and I. But what? Look, do you remember that book you found ages ago when we were doing Sleeping Tiger? A slight thing, a novella more than a novel. You thought it might make a film. A long pause. When he answered, his voice was not quite as flat. You mean the Robin Morm thing? About the manservant? The servant, that's it. What about it? Do you think it's still available? I don't know. Let me check it out. When he called, it was to say that the book was still available, that it had been bought by someone, scripted by Harold Pinter, abandoned, but that we could secure the rights. He didn't like the present version, had had long discussions with Pinter, and they'd found a new formula together. If, he said, I was really serious, he would start negotiations right away. Of course I'm serious. Good. You're too old to play the boy now. You can play the servant. We wrestled the servant to the screen. It was on and off with the frequency of a conjurer's hat. If I found Pinter's script difficult to read, the distributors and the money found it utterly incomprehensible and shied away from it like frightened horses. But a series of odd coincidences gave us courage. With me set to play the servant, Losey knew that he must bolster my name with a sound female one. He had in mind a new and very exciting girl called Sarah Miles, but she was greatly in demand. It seemed unlikely that she would accept such a modest assignment. She read it, said she liked it, but one night I switched on the television to watch the news and quite by chance tuned into the wrong channel. A small one-act play of not much interest, except for the sudden, astonishing appearance of a young man who was instantly, beyond any shadow of doubt, the one actor we had to have for the third exceptionally difficult part. I'd never seen or heard of him before. His name was Maurice Oliver. I called Lucy, who hung up to watch, and our mutual agent, Robin Fox, who was, as it happened, watching already, since Maurice Oliver was in fact James Fox and his son. Some days later, under constant prodding from forward, I was forced, and that is the word, to attend an important premiere. It was a tedious event. At the supper which followed, Ford found himself next to Sarah Miles, whom he didn't know except by sight. Across from him, to his mild astonishment, was Fox. He decided to meddle. "It's awfully sad you can't do the servant," he said to Sarah. "You'd be marvellous." Sarah looked vaguely surprised. "Why, I simply long to do it." "What do you mean?" "Well, I hear you're committed elsewhere." "Oh, no, that's all nonsense. I love the servant. I'm mad about it, really." She nodded her head across the table to Fox. "And wouldn't he be super as Tony?" "That's who we want for Tony." "I don't believe it. How marvellous. Oh, goodness, he's my very best friend." "I think," said Ford, "that we ought to go and have a word with Mr. Lucy. He's sitting over there." The next morning we all met in my apartment at the Connaught, and over coffee and Bloody Marys the servant unfolded its wings again. With Sarah we eventually got some money, a start, but not the final ready-to-shoot with money. Robin Fox, one memorable afternoon at the Connaught, made a swift, final and desperate phone call to Leslie Grade, who came to the rescue and provided the necessary cash. After the weeks of battle and strain, Lucy was a weakened man. Exactly 1 week after we started shooting, in the coldest winter we'd had for years, he collapsed with pneumonia. Oh, God, it's a bitch. I got to stay put until I'm better, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. His voice was weak, whispery, agonized. "But, Joe, surely we can do something." "What can we do?" "They'll abandon. They'll collect the insurance money and forget all about it. It often happens." He was so weak that he could hardly speak, and I could hardly hear him, but I did hear the softest word which he managed to add. "Unless." "Unless what?" "Could you take over and direct?" "Yeah. I could give you instructions by telephone. I've worked a lot of it out." The next day, with a thudding heart and a willing, loyal cast and crew, I nervously picked up his baton, and we were off again. For 10 days, with almost hourly calls to Lucy's bedside for explicit and detailed instructions, which, however ill, he never failed to give, we carried on with the film. I never strayed from Lucy's style, and the work went along at a good pace. I was immeasurably proud of the crew and the cast who so eagerly moved to help a man they greatly respected, almost revered, in fact, who lay so despairingly ill, and whose superhuman efforts and beliefs now seemed to be in jeopardy. It was one of the most extraordinary expressions of loyalty and devotion that I have ever witnessed in this sometimes tawdry profession. And when he broke the rules yet again, by staggering back to the studio far too soon, gaunt, grey, painfully weak, the heartfelt applause which greeted his arrival on the set was deeply moving. A brilliant designer, and Bumble Dawson was one of the very best, has a great deal to do with an actor's performance. I am an actor who works from the outside in. Once I can wear the clothes of my alter ego, then I begin the process of his development. Each item selected by Bumble for the manservant was carefully chosen by Lucy, down to the tie-pin. A mean, shabby outfit for a mean and shabby man. For me, the most important element of the wardrobe are the shoes. From the shoes, I can find the walk I must use. From the walk comes the stance. In the chosen clothes, one's body starts to form another's. Another person walks and breathes. Next, the detail. Brill-creamed hair, flat to the head, a little scurfy round the back and in the parting, white puddingy face, glazed, aggrieved eyes, and then the walk to blend the assembly together. With my paraphernalia assembled under Losey's approving eye with a superb text from Pinter, handed to me as a gift, Barrett was ready to exist. There was almost nothing left to do but wind him up and set him off to work. Like all the greatest directors, Losey never tells you what to do or how to do it, only what not to do, which is very different. You give him your character and he'll watch it develop, encouraging or modifying, always taking what is offered and using it deftly. You only know that you've done it to his ultimate satisfaction when he says print at the end of a take. There's no waste of chatter, no great in-depth discussion about motivation, no mumbo-jumbo about the identification, soul or truth. You get on with it. Card's famous advice to an actor still holds good. Just learn your lines, dear, and don't bump into the furniture. With Pinter the same applies. We never at any time, either on The Servant or later on the far more complicated Accident, sat in huddled readings of the text, having it explained or trying to find what was meaningful. Pinter's scripts are honed and polished long before they reach the actor's hand, and what he intends or doesn't intend becomes abundantly clear the instant one starts to work. Pinter doesn't give you instructions. The instructions are implicit in the words he offers so sparingly for his actors to speak. He's one of the few writers who are brilliant in the text that they don't write. His pauses are the time phases which he gives you so that you may develop the thought behind the lines he has written. As well as discovering the time for thought, with Losey one also discovered the values of texture. Oh, of wood, of metal, of glass, of the petal of a flower. Plaster wood does not feel like wood. Neither does it photograph like wood. Nylon is not silk. Fiberglass is not steel. All these apparently trivial items add up to an enormous whole. Even if the audience is not immediately aware, its emotions feel the truth. It's real. It was these convictions that got The Servant off the ground. It was, however, quite another thing to get it shown when we finally finished. No one wanted this effort. No one was even prepared to give it a single showing. Obscure, obscene, too complicated, too dark, too slow, and naturally too uncommercial. It was removed from our hands and placed on the distributor shelves to gather dust like a poor wine. It seemed that the whole endeavour had not paid off. The courage had been in vain. The money, such as there had been, was written off as a company loss. But Losey was not prepared to let his work lie on shelves. From time to time he rescued his stack of tins, and we had showings of the film for selected people in private screening theatres for which he, or we, paid the rent. Eventually, after 8 months of battle and trailing about like commercial travellers selling a brand of soap which nobody, including the owners, believed in, fortune came in the shape of Arthur Aberlees, then head of Warner Brothers in Europe. With a spare week to fill at his vast theatre in Leicester Square, he ran a pile of rejected films to try and fill the gap. The Servant was the one he chose. We couldn't have fallen into more sensitive hands. Amazed at the stupidity of his fellows passionate about the film, he announced that we were to open after all. It was an unbelievably lucky chance. I was in my dressing room changing out of my costume to go and lunch when Arnold Schultz, my stand-in for many years, banged at the door with the entire London press gathered in his arms. Brought you these first reviews. He never gave anything away. Well, are they all right? A slating or what? Not a slating, no. Bloody fantastic. All of them? Every one. Good, isn't it? After all this time, eh? Times is on the top. Read it first. I would. They lay before me the verdict on our work, a jury returned. I locked the door and leant against it with the Times, and read slowly and carefully all the way through, slowly sliding down until I was squatting on my haunches, my back hard against the primrose paint. The last 2 paragraphs of John Russell Taylor's review were difficult to read because of tears, but I got the point. The moment which I had never thought would come had come at last. The moment when, sitting down, albeit squatting on Mr. Rank's brown Wilton, I would be able to say, "Ah, that's it. That's what I meant it to be." And I said it aloud to relish the sounds of the thought of words. Not only for myself, oh indeed not for that, but for all of us.
Bogarde on Film was read by the author and abridged by Neville Teller. The producer was Janet Whittaker. And tomorrow, the